Okay. All right, well, yes, thank you all so much for coming. And my name is Pavia Justinian. I'm the artist in residence here for the fall. And yeah, like Jessica said, my studio is across the street over on 5th and Uray, and I do have open studio hours there every Wednesday 10 to noon up until December 3rd when my residency ends. So please do come by if you want to see my artwork or see what I do. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. All right. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to you all a little bit about my artwork and how I got started as an artist. And yeah, I've been an artist my entire life. And I'm really happy to say that I've been able to do it professionally for the last almost 3 years now. And so the way I got started with that was my first job was at a nursing home, and I was 15. And I stayed in the medical field and really just tried to save money as much as possible for 10 years. And at that point, Shanki, my boyfriend, he really kind of pushed me to make that leap, and he inspired me to make that leap to pursue my dream of being a full-time artist. And at that point, I decided, okay, and I quit my job at St. Mary's, and I've been doing art full-time ever since. And I love it, and I'm excited about it, and it's great. So, Shanki is also a professional photographer, so almost all of the photos that you're going to see in this presentation tonight are photos that he took. And so I've been really blessed, to have his support and to have the support in general of family and friends, which is so important for anybody starting out, but especially, an artist or anybody that is kind of going for something that is difficult, to make money at. It's important to have the support of family and friends, and I've been really blessed with that. One of the people who really has supported me in my art career is my very good friend and mentor, Dave Davis, who sadly passed away several months ago. But I was really lucky to have the chance to work with him. I apprenticed with him for my final year in college and for a year afterward. And we stayed friends, and I was always able to ask him for advice, and he was a wonderful friend and an amazing artist. And I was also very lucky to have a chance to collaborate with him on a sculpture, which is this piece here. This is a fun photo that I took of Dave while the sculpture was still in process. And then over on the right is the completed piece. So Dave started Art on the Corner. And Art on the Corner is, it was the first public art exhibit of its kind in the country. And so many cities really emulated that and modeled their own public art programs off of that, to the point that now, thanks to Dave's efforts, sculptors like me really have a ton of different options for places to exhibit artwork and, just, places to get our artwork out there. So that was really great. And so this is our piece that we sculpted together, and it is currently on display on 5th and Main in Art on the Corner in front of Summit Canyon Mountaineering. So when we built this piece, we decided to leave it untitled because people see different things in the sculpture, and we've had a lot of different people say different things about it, that it looks like a musical instrument or a flame or a wave or different things. And so we didn't want to pre-color anyone's judgment, and so we did just leave it untitled. We kind of created the design, and then we put it together with a lot of scrap steel and patinaed it with rust, and it has weathered wood and brazed brass. Dave actually taught me how to braze brass on this piece, so that's definitely a good memory. And it was just such an honor to be able to work with him. He was such an artistic master and such a good friend. So that piece is on 5th and Main, if you want to check that out. There's another picture of it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my other public art pieces. Public art has really been a great venue for me to, it's been a great source of income for me in my artistic career. The way it works is kind of that you receive a stipend for putting your sculpture on display in a public location for 1 year. And so at the end of that year, it's deinstalled and you can put it in another show and receive another stipend. So it's almost like renting a piece out for a year, and it is a good source of income for me. This is the first sculpture that I built in my own studio. I had built some other public art pieces using other people's equipment in their studios, but this is the first piece that I built in my own studio, and her name is Zafira. She is made with oil-painted cement and mosaic glass over a steel frame. And she was on display in Westminster in 2016, where she won the People's Choice Award. And she's currently on display in Longmont at St. Stephen's Plaza. And Zafira, the name Zafira means successful in Arabic, which I didn't actually know that at the time that I named her. I chose it because I felt like it was a very strong, powerful name, and I think she looks like she has a lot of strength to her and grace. To me, it was very graceful as well. But I like that it means successful too, because she's kind of bejeweled, and I think that works. And she's very uplifted with her joy and success. And the pose that she's in is based off of the Fibonacci spiral, which is the golden mean. And so whenever I would see the golden mean curve, I always kind of envisioned it tipped up this way, because I don't know if some of you have seen it, usually it's shown horizontally. But this is a shape that artists have been using forever and ever, and it's also in nature, in galaxies, and the shells of sea creatures in different places. But whenever I would see this curve kind of tipped up on its head, I really liked it, and I really saw this kind of uplifted, joyful figure in there, and I wanted to create her. So that's Zafira, and yeah, I don't know if I said she's made of oil-painted cement and mosaic glass over a steel frame, which a lot of my life-size sculptures are made with generally that medium. Yeah, so
pretty heavy.
Pretty heavy, yeah. And actually what I use now is different. I use an epoxy now. And so going forward, when I create life-size sculptures, I'm going to be using the epoxy, and that's going to save on weight quite a lot. These sculptures are very heavy. And this is a picture of Zafira in Longmont in St. Stephen's Plaza, where she is now.
Did you weld your frame?
Yes, I did. Yep, I weld all my own frames. I have a MIG welder, which is currently being repaired right now, but it's been really faithful for a long time, and it's still under warranty, so happy about that. But yeah, so I've got my own welder and my own forge. I do all the metal work, and then so I build like a steel framework, and then I fill it with spray foam insulation, which saves a little bit on weight because it's not all the way cement. Then I wrap all of that in lath, which is just like a stucco, or it's a steel mesh that they use for stucco. And then I sculpt with cement over that, and then I oil paint it and varnish it to protect from the elements. Yeah, so you might recognize this next piece. This is Sigma.
My fave.
Yay, thank you. I like Sigma a lot too. She was on display in Art on the Corner a couple years ago, where she did win Best in Show. And she also won the People's Choice Award in Moab Art Trails last year. So, and that's another really good avenue of income, because all of these, most of them, pretty much all of them, all of the public art shows, they all have an opportunity for one or more artists to win an award, and so I've won some of those as well, and so that's also another good opportunity for income. But Sigma is made with a lot of things that Dave gave me. Dave Davis was always sharing his materials that he had collected from out in the desert and different places, and so I was really lucky to be able to, have access to some of these things, because now, steel is very expensive, and it's, it's hard to find older things like this. So Sigma is made with chrome bumpers and the base of an old cream separator. and pieces of a plow and harness. And she has a glass block right in the center, so light passes through her. And so that's Sigma. And she is currently on display in Palisade, in front of Independent Park on 3rd and Cluj, down the street from the Blue Pig Gallery. So if anybody wants to check out Sigma, that's where she is. Yeah, and here's some more pictures of Sigma. She has a shovel butt, which I always really liked. And that middle picture is me giving an artist talk about Sigma, and that's another good opportunity with these public art shows. A lot of them give you a chance to give an artist talk about your piece, and I really enjoy doing that. It's a great opportunity to connect with people. So this is my next piece. This is Ilana, and you'll notice on a lot of these I've cut out the sculpture like in GIMP, which is like a free version of Photoshop. So I've cut out the sculpture and I've kind of done some graphic design work with it. And the reason I do that is because I create postcards. So every time I have a public sculpture installed in a show, I make postcards with my contact info and my artist statement and stuff, to pass out to people. And so I do have all of those up on the counter here, so you're welcome to help yourself to some of those. So Ilana is a wood nymph, and she's built with driftwood hips and a stone fetus. I actually built this entire sculpture around the stone because I thought it looked so embryonic that I really wanted to set it, in a woman's stomach, and kind of how she has that hand curling around her stomach, protecting her baby. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And she's also made with oil painted cement and mosaic glass over a steel frame. She was exhibited in Westminster in 2016 and 17, and she's currently on display in Old Town Square, Fort Collins. And she has steel fairy wings, which actually move a little bit if you can kind of move them around a little bit and they kind of flutter. But so that's Ilana. There's me and Ilana. And you might recognize this next sculpture as well. This is Felicia, and she is currently on display outside of 970 West Studio, where I have my residency and where I hold my open studio hours, everything here at the library across the street. And Felicia is built on a rotating pulley, and she's also illuminated. And she won Commissioner's Choice in Longmont last year, and she's going to be on display outside of 970 West until December 6th. So if you want to check her out, you can. She's built on the rotating pulley, so you can take her hand and you can dance with her. You can spin her around and dance with her, and it's been really fun during my residency to watch people interact with her through the window. Because a lot of people go down Fifth, and I actually saw a lady once in a mobility scooter ripping on by, and she takes Felicia's hand and goes, woo! And that was just so much fun seeing that. It's great to see people interact with your artwork. That's a lot of fun. And that's Felicia. And these last two public art pieces are Kahaya and Mahina. And they are twin sculptures. They're bioluminescent water nymphs. And so you can kind of see here, they have solar panels in their bases. And so they collect light all day, and then they're illuminated out of the glass windows. And the glass windows are set into sections from Army landing mats from the Vietnam era. Mahina is on display in Lafayette right now, and Kahaya was on display in Palisade last year. Actually, she was in the same place where Sigma is now. So she was in front of Independent Park on 3rd and Cluj, and that's where Sigma is now. That's Kahaya and Mahina. And then another important source of income for me has been creating commissioned art pieces. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of artists who don't like to create commissioned work because you're kind of beholden to, somebody else's idea. But I don't feel that way. I mean, I really enjoy helping people bring their artistic vision to life, and I've done several commissions and I've really enjoyed them. Yeah, so the most recent one that I did, I just finished about, maybe a month ago, and it's a portrait of Hugo. And so you can see this is the sculpture over on the right, and then it's a portrait of the sculpture on the left. So Hugo was actually the first public art piece I ever built, and he's about 7 feet tall, and he was acquired by a private patron in 16. And he has, my patron has a summer home in Uray, Colorado. So you can see where Hugo sits in front of Squaw Peak, and he's in this very picturesque alpine setting. So this year, my patron asked me to create a portrait of Hugo for his winter home in Arizona. So he's, this is almost all metal that he's sculpted out of, except for at the bottom I have some stones to replicate the plinth that he's on. This is all metal, and so I sculpted Squaw Peak. In the background, it's a wall sculpture. So Squaw Peak is torch cut, and then I've brazed it with brass and copper, and I created these aspens here and brazed those with brass, and the trunks are conduit, actually. I just kind of welded the little eyes and things on those. And then you can see in the background here, all the pine trees, all of those are little welding lines, which actually I think is what broke my welder, because it was like many hours of welding. You can see all the lines there. So I actually finished this piece at in my stepdad's shop. He has a shop too, so that's what I'm saying about support of friends and family. I always know I can use somebody else's welder if mine breaks, and many other things. So I'm really blessed. But yeah, so he's built inside of an old wagon wheel. And all of the kind of brownish orange areas are rust patinated steel. So I put ferric nitrate on the steel, and that rusted really, really quickly. So that's a portrait of Hugo. And
How did you come to call him Hugo?
I don't know. I just kind of looked at him, and I don't know, he looked like a Hugo.
He does.
Well, thank you. I couldn't really say exactly why I chose to call him that, but it just seemed to fit, I guess. And so this next piece is Trinity. And she is the first larger scale sculpture that I built with epoxy, because this epoxy is a medium that I discovered relatively recently. And so I've been building sculptural paintings and some smaller pieces with it, but Trinity was the first large-scale piece that I sculpted with this epoxy. And going forward, I'm going to do all my large-scale work with the epoxy, because you can get a lot more detail with it, and it is a lot lighter weight. So a little bit more about Trinity. She's built with steel, epoxy, and still oil-painted cement. Or actually, this is acrylic. I'm sorry, not oil. She's acrylic. So with the epoxy, you actually can texture it with cement, just kind of a veneer of it over the top. And so it actually looks the same as if you did all cement, but it's a lot lighter weight. And I really like this epoxy because you can inlay other materials in there, and you don't have to put it in the kiln or anything like that. You just kind of mix it together. It's a chemical reaction, basically. So when you mix the two parts together, then that's what makes it cure, and so you don't have to put it in a kiln or anything like that. It just air cures, and so that allows you to kind of just put different materials in there and not worry about baking it or anything like that. And you can also get more detail, like she has all these braids, which are braided epoxy, and that's not really something that you could do so easily with cement. So I enjoy doing that. And here's a couple more pictures. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to sculpting roses?
How do you know that epoxy is going to stand up to the weather for years?
Oh, sure, that's a good question. What I do know about it is that they use this epoxy in like Disneyland and like places where kids are touching it all the time, and it is outdoors, you know, so I know from other people's experiences that it will definitely hold up outdoors. And in my own experience, I have made smaller pedestal-sized sculptures out of this epoxy, and they've held up really well in the elements so far. Yeah, so the epoxy itself, it really doesn't degrade at all. The paint over it, you know, you have to seal with some sort of a UV-resistant varnish, otherwise it will fade. But I've had great luck with it so far.
Does it off gas?
Not really, no. I mean, there's a very, very mild scent, but it's not, if you're thinking epoxy and you like Bondo, I mean, that stuff will give you a headache right away, you know. But this stuff, it's a very, very mild smell, and I find that it's not a gassy smell. It's not bad. Yeah.
Do people sit for these sculptures, or do you, it just comes from your imagination or photographs?
Mainly it comes from my imagination, you know, and sometimes, like, especially with commissioned work, I'll do a drawing first so that my patron can see, you know, kind of what it's going to look like later. And then I'll take that drawing and then I'll project it larger, and I'll, you know, maybe trace different pieces onto foam and put it together, you know, to kind of, to get to like a starting point with it. But yeah, I do kind of just, I don't have anyone sit for the drawing either. I just kind of come up with it in my head. Yeah. Any more questions?
So how heavy is that? Say that sculpture you can do that. Epoxy.
She's 34 pounds, and she has a fair bit of steel on her too. So without the steel, she'd probably be a lot less. I think before I started adding Trinity herself, just the steel part, I think was like 25 pounds or something like that. So the figure is around 10 pounds. She's very lightweight.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Weighted sculptures always been a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, that's another thing that Shawnee has helped me with a lot too, is moving my cement sculptures, you know? Yeah, so it's great to have good people to help you, for sure. Any more questions?
Is it pretty tough to do something that's different, something at home?
Yes, actually, yeah. I have accidentally dropped sculptures before that I made with epoxy, and they've been totally fine. One of the people who has taken some of my classes that I've done during my residency, she accidentally left her project on top of her truck, and she drove down the street with it, and it fell down, and it was totally fine.
Wow.
It's a great material. It's more durable than cement, you know, because I have had to do a little bit of maintenance here and there, you know, to my cement sculptures, because they can kind of expand a little bit with the elements, but this stuff does not do that at all. So it takes about 4 to 6 hours, something like that. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I forgot to mention, I do actually sell this epoxy on my website, paviajustinian.com/art supplies. So I do sell this epoxy. It's a great product, and I do recommend it. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming, and we'll get started on making roses now.
The lights are coming on.